On one's journey of truth, I'm sure that you've come across certain agents of this matrix that try to hinder you using abusive tactics that they have learned from this realm. And these tactics only mean to hinder your progression forward. They only elicit within you certain trigger responses that bring you back to that animalistic beast nature of defending your pride and your ego and causing chaos and division within your process of coming to know more truth. These are like little barriers that they put in place to stop the conversation from progressing. They get you to look at the silliest of things rather than progressing you forward. There's a difference between arguing, stating your case, your opinions. Differences of opinion are necessary for discovering more truth, because to think that you know it all and you aren't accepting opposition to that just means that you are fearful of being wrong. If you are fearful of being wrong, that means you're fearful of the truth. So opposing ideas and arguments, no matter how far along you think you are, is absolutely necessary, because it will only strengthen your position, or it will allow you to see the weak points in that position so that you can further fortify them or make the appropriate changes so that you get closer and closer to the truth. I'm all for opposition and pushback on ideas and thoughts, because, like I said, it will only lead you to a more stable foundation within yourself. But there is a difference between that and using abusive tactics to demoralize you, to make you feel that you are ignorant and stupid, and especially name calling and battling of egos. A lot of times it is the battle of the ego that is taking place between arguments. And this only leads to the division of people trying to come together, to work together in order to come to more truths, to come to more awareness of themselves in this realm. There are certain people who are constantly working from that fallen nature without even knowing it most of the time. They are working on building their ego, their pride, their specialness, their elitism. And if putting you down and making you feel less than and making you feel that you're a complete idiot, if that is going to build their ego and their false sense of identity, then they have no problem doing that to you. These are all tactics learned in this realm. These tactics are purely based on survival, purely based on the survival of the ego of that person. No matter how much they say they have transcended this fallen nature, if you are working on keeping your ego alive, breathing and eating, and that ego has to feed off of the demoralization of someone else, the ego will have no problem in deceiving you into thinking that you are above and beyond everyone around you. And any type of attack on this ego, it will trigger that into survival mode and attack and defend and demoralize someone else who is putting that ego in fight or flight response. You want to lose this thing. You don't want to participate in the survival of the ego of this realm. Why would you want to constantly think that you are better than everyone else around you when that doesn't give you any sort of truth, because you aren't allowing yourself to genuinely and honestly look and say, wow, is this just another survival mechanism? I'm getting triggered because they are telling me something that is putting my survival ego into fight or flight response. And I have to defend, I have to attack and consume this other person because they are jeopardizing who I think I am. If I know who I am, or if I'm honestly wanting to know who I am, why do I have to bring chaos and division with someone or something that I disagree with? And it's different when it comes to hierarchical structures of this realm, but when it's individual people who are yearning for truth, who are doing their best to figure that out within themselves, why do I want to hinder that within them? Why do I want the worst for them? I see this a lot with certain people who come to my channel or other people's channels, or some people's channels are just based on purely survival of their false identity. And anything that comes along to jeopardize that false identity, the beast awakens within them, and they will do any and everything possible to squash that truth that is trying to bubble up within them, and they will protect their false identity at all cost, even if it means abusing you because you have a disagreement with them. They will never admit that this is what's going on within them. Because if it wasn't going on within them, why would they get so triggered? Why would they constantly hurl insults purely based on your false identity? When you come to a certain level of awareness, you realize all of these mechanisms that are at play within yourself. And then you can, by self-reflecting, you can empathize with other people and say, hey, they are actually going through what I'm going through too. And it took me however long it took me to get here. So instead of wanting to hinder their process, I want to be a guidance to help awaken them to more truth. If they say things that are not aligned or agree with my level of awareness, I have every right to say, hey, I just don't agree with that. I see that from my own personal journey, I've been through similar things. I've thought those things. And I can see that I've already transcended those thoughts and ideas. But I don't want to hinder you. I don't want to demoralize you from continuing your journey to that. So instead of harassing you, instead of demoralizing you and calling you childish names and trying to keep you down to a lower state of consciousness, I would much rather help raise you up. I would much rather use what I've come to know to help you come to know it as well. And if you've never come to know it as well, that's on you. I cannot force any change within you that you are not ready and allowing within yourself. And no amount of battling and arguing is going to change that. I have to leave you exactly where you are. And if you want to know more, you can ask. You can have a conversation. But this constant belittling, this constant gaslighting, this constant abuse that we see through the world at large, but even in these circles of people trying to come to truth, if you don't realize these tactics are of this fallen world, you are just deceiving yourself. You are just deceiving yourself because you are allowing the ego to survive. You are allowing the part of you that needs to be destroyed, that needs to be done away with, to fester and grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why do you think name calling? Why do you think harassing? Why do you think belittling and putting people down has anything to do with the truth? It doesn't. The same applies to the animals who are surviving off of each other in nature. That animal is only listening to its survival mechanisms to go take down that antelope and to consume it. The same is true with the more intelligent side of that survivalness. The more intelligent side of that survivalness is saying, hey, I need you to go consume that opposing point of view and consume it because it is threatening my survival. If you were to allow this ego to go unchecked and to separate from it, that would mean the death of me. And people who can't self-reflect or to say, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Hey, maybe I can allow this antelope to live because I realize whatever it's doing, it's doing. Whatever I'm doing, that is what I need to be focused on. What I am doing to transcend the survival mechanisms of every layer of myself far surpasses just the physical body. The mental and psychological body is also trying to survive. It needs you to be under the trance of thinking that it's you. It needs you to have this false perception that everyone else out there is less than you because you need that superiority in order to function, because you haven't been able to look within yourself and transcend those things within yourself. And we all do it. We all do it. I've have done this many times in my life, but I am trying to transcend that. I am trying to overcome that. I am trying to see that all of that is just a mental illusion that this ego is projecting onto me. And when I get triggered, when I get upset and want to force my opinions, want to force my ways of thinking, want to force what I think is right onto people, I have to realize that I am just playing a game just like every other layer that this thing wants me to participate in. I am not trying to have little wars and ego battles with people, especially when it comes to thinking that I'm better than you because I have more information than you. I have seen past way more illusions than you, so that means I am a much higher entity and you're just some kind of demonic lower being And if you don't agree with me, that means you are somehow some kind of demon or some sort of... If you're not at my level of awareness, that means I have permission to psychologically abuse you. I have permission to psychologically harm you. Why do I feel that I need to harm you? You have to ask yourself these questions. You get triggered. So your survival response is to lash back out, to harm someone else psychologically. You may not be physically harming them, but you're trying to psychologically harm them. Why would you want to harm someone else in any way unless it is for defensive purposes? So realize that is a defense response within you because something is trying to... You feel like you're being attacked, right? You're receiving these messages that are subconscious, that someone is attacking you. Someone is trying to dethrone you from your level of higher superiority than someone else. Just realize that who cares if you think that you're better than someone else? Why does that actually matter to you? Why? Tell me why. It's because you are trying to feed that false identity, that superiority complex that you have within yourself. We like to say, oh, how can these higher beings, these higher entities, how can they let this continue? Why can't they see our plight, our struggles, our sufferings, and do something about it? It's a good question. But if you think that you're higher, you have a higher awareness, you're so far more along than other people, why are you behaving the same way as those entities who have a higher awareness, that should know better, that should try to limit the suffering and abuse and harm here? Why are you acting in accordance with these fallen beings, with these psychopathic intentions? Whether you know it or not, you are being a predator to other people. You are feeding off of their low vibrational states because of how you are behaving. Because of how you're behaving. Your behavior is eliciting low vibrational energy from other people when you decide to abuse them psychologically. We have to realize that these certain triggers will trigger you to do something against your will. And it's important to catch yourself when you're in this act of domineering other people, of domineering their psychological responses. Just like animals, we have certain instincts that are built within us that will try to defend our false identities, that will try to defend attacks. And if someone is constantly attacking you, constantly putting you down, constantly causing division and chaos, what do you think is happening? How are you any different than these entities that you so-called are against? You're not. All you're doing is being a pawn for them because you cannot see within yourself and self-reflect and say, wow, I'm being used as a pawn to incite more suffering. It may not be physical suffering, but is absolutely mental and psychological suffering. And I am hindering others from progressing because I am keeping them in a fallen state of awareness, constantly focused on drama and my own self-importance. I think it says a lot about someone who can be attacked and still show respect for that person. Still show respect because they have overcome those triggers of the fallen mind and the triggers of trying to keep your false identity surviving. You can say, hey, these feelings and this person insulted me. I can see their tactics. They are trying to insult me. They are trying to keep me in a low vibrational state. They are trying to knock me off of where I want to go and make me react in an animalistic way. No, I'm not trying to participate in that. There's a difference between disagreeing and stating your opinions of why you disagree and saying how you think they're wrong. But it's a completely different story when your tactic is mental abuse and demoralization of character. That is of the fallen state of consciousness. And that is exactly what these entities do to us on a daily basis. If you cannot even overcome this archonic mind programming, how can you even sit there and say that you are better than anyone else? Because you can't even see that working within yourself. And it's hard. It's hard, but that is part of the inner work that is necessary to separate your consciousness from this lower state of being, because it's all based off of survival of something that is not you. Would you get this upset if a child said this to you? If a child was like, hey, I'm just like, I'm so much better than you because I have more truth than you, and it's all about me, and I want you to worship me, and I want you to feed my false ego and identity. No, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of annoying, but I realize that you're a child because you have not gotten to this state of awareness. You have your own mental programmings, you have your own behaviors that are part of the human experience. I am trying to transcend that human animalistic behavior, and you're just a child. So I'm going to try, instead of lash out at you, instead of wish you harm, instead of attacking you, I realize the social engineering and trauma that we all go through. You have not reached a separation point from those survival mechanisms. Instead of bashing you and returning the hate towards you, I'm either going to try to help guide you or put you back to your parents. But to be in a constant back and forth, arguing over childish things that do not help anyone or anything come to more truth is just a waste of time and a complete energy siphoning off of you. And we have grown adults who act just like a child. And if we can overcome this mental trigger that want us to defend ourselves against a child, well, there's no need to defend yourself against a child. You're obviously working through the mental programs and lies of the false reality. And I don't want to be wrapped in to this silly, low vibrational chaos that many people like to infuse into other people's truth-seeking journey. Like I said, there's a difference between disagreements. There's a difference between opposing views. But if your opposing view is to belittle and demoralize and psychologically attack because your ego is trying to survive, that's just a waste of time, and I wish the best for you. Hopefully you can overcome that. But there's no right that you should have access to me when you're psychologically abusing me. And those are your intentions, whether you know it or not. Every time you put yourself on a high horse and think you're better than people and think that you know more, and everyone else around you, since you're higher than them, that means you can psychologically abuse them. That is just an archonic mind programming that you have learned from this realm. And that's the same thing these entities justify into doing what they do to us, because they are higher than us, they think, in their mind. So that means they know what's best, and they can use any manipulation tactic in the book to cause warfare with you. And as long as you validate, yes, you're such a higher being than me, you know what's right for me, blah, 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 blah. They want that worship. They want worship, just like these people who want worship from you. You can see it. You can see it. All these people want is worship from you. They want you to validate within them that they are superior than you. That's all it is. That's all it is. And it's just archonic mind programming that they haven't overcome. There's nothing wrong with disagreements. There's nothing wrong with coming to your own truth. But how can you say that you are coming to the truth when you are using abusive tactics in order to win battles of superiority? You're not. You're just playing the game of survival of the fittest of this realm. Every ounce of suffering here is unjustifiable. Every ounce of manipulation is unjustifiable. Every abuse that any one of us has gone through is unjustifiable. And yes, you can say that we have abused other people in that process because we were running on the archonic mind programming of abuse. If you can't see this and you're not actively working on overcoming this, then how can you actually say that you are separating from a realm of suffering and manipulation when you are using it in your daily life? If you are using the tactics of a fallen nature and being proud of it, how are you ever going to say that you are transcending this place? No, you are being manipulated into thinking that abuse tactics are justifiable when it comes to arguing or trying to protect your superiority. And that is exactly what these entities do to us. So how can you say that you are sovereign if you're being controlled by the same mind viruses that these beings use on us? That is from them. That is of them. And I mean, I can't say that you're not them. Maybe you are. Maybe you are them. All I know is I am not them. I know many people who listen to these videos and are searching for this truth are not of them. So we can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. And by change, I mean change the programming, change the way you behave, change the trigger response of the instinctual animal nature within you to protect your ego. And view it as like you're talking to a child. Don't let these archonic mind viruses that are in people throw you off balance, throw you off where you want to be going, because that's all it is doing. That's its intention, whether the person knows it or not. It's trying to infest you back into the lower state of consciousness and to respond in an equal and negative way when you can transcend that. I'm not saying don't defend yourself. I'm not saying tolerate abuse. No. You have every right to just block people. You have every right to walk away, to not engage. That's the thing. You can pretty much tell from a conversation or the things people say where their mind is, who has control over their mind. So why do we have to engage with them? You don't. But they want you to be infested with what they have. And they want you to respond with that infestation of fallen parasitic consciousness. And the more you do that, the more it wraps you back down into that state. There are many people in this life and in this community who want that response from you, whether they know it or not. We have the power to transcend that and to not behave and act in that way. There's a difference between like joking around and saying, if someone says something terrible to you or try to assert their dominance over you. Yeah, you can defend yourself in a funny way, or in a defensive way. But if they trigger you into responding intentionally abusive back, is that not just wrapping you back down into the lower state of consciousness, into what you're trying to expand out of? Because where I want to go where there is no abusive thought in my mind, where I'm totally free to do, say, and think exactly how it is without any sort of manipulative trigger to bring me back down into a state I no longer resonate with.